I love your perspective on this. Boz's approach to Dorit's long-windedness was so refreshing. She didn't just tolerate it or make it a joke like some of the other women have, but she genuinely embraced it as something that makes their dynamic work. It was such a graceful, affirming way to acknowledge Dorit's personality without making her feel self-conscious. I totally get what you're saying about Kyle's teasing too. It's usually lighthearted, but you can sometimes see that flicker of self-awareness in Dorit's expression, like she's used to people pointing it out. Boz, on the other hand, created space for Dorit to just be herself without judgment, and that's such a rare quality in the Housewives world. And you're right, so many of them talk just as much, if not more, than Dorit. It's funny how certain narratives stick while others don't. Maybe it's just that Dorit has a particular way of storytelling that makes people notice it more, but I take her detailed anecdotes over Bronwyn's self-important monologues any day. I also hope we get to see more of Boz and Dorit's dynamic in reverse. Dorit really listening to Boz, because Boz has such a magnetic energy and deep insight. Their friendship could be one of the most genuine ones in the group. It sounds like Boz's reaction was overblown and performative rather than genuine, especially given Sutton's well-documented social awkwardness. Sutton's focus was entirely on dealing with her mother, and it's unrealistic to expect her to do a preemptive "you're not invited" announcement. That would have caused just as much, if not more, drama. Boz calling Sutton a coward and interpreting the situation as a slight against herself feels like a reach, especially since Sutton's actions weren't about Boz at all. It's interesting how Boz, who is supposedly great at reading people, completely misread this moment, or deliberately misread it to stir up something. Given her history, it's very possible she was playing it up for drama, especially if production had a hand in nudging things that way. Also, completely agree that Garcelle was the one who had the roughest time. RHOBH's treatment of her was shockingly rude, and that should have been the real takeaway from the trip. It sounds like you have strong feelings about Camille from The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills Season 1. She was definitely one of the most polarizing figures of that season, coming across as condescending and self-important, yet also experiencing a very public and painful betrayal. Her infamous feud with Kyle Richards and her tendency to shift between playing the victim and acting superior rubbed many viewers the wrong way. But as you mentioned, her morally corrupt Faye Resnick line is legendary in Housewives history. That said, her divorce from Kelsey Grammer was brutal, and while she was insufferable at times, watching someone go through that level of heartbreak on television was undeniably difficult. Lisa Rinna definitely brought a different kind of drama, more over-the-top and performative, whereas Camille's drama was more about passive aggression and manipulation. Do you think Camille ever redeemed herself in later seasons, or did she just double down on her worst traits? You've captured a lot of what made the early seasons of RHOBH so compelling: the blend of genuine friendships, organic drama, and luxurious escapism. Your take on each woman is pretty spot on for Season 4, and it's interesting to see how your impressions align with longtime viewers. A few thoughts on your opinions. Lisa Vanderpump. She was the queen, no doubt. She had wit, charm, and a natural ability to stir the pot while keeping her hands clean. But as you said, she defended some bad behavior, and as the seasons progress, you'll see more cracks in her queen bee persona. Kyle. She's always been insecure and deeply concerned with her image. Her relationship with Kim is one of the most emotionally layered aspects of the show, and it only gets messier. Kim. Pure is an interesting word for her. She's definitely not malicious, but she does have a way of twisting situations and making herself the victim. Her struggles with addiction add another layer to the show that made it very real and sometimes heartbreaking to watch. Brandi. If you despise her now, buckle up. She has a few redeeming qualities, but her tendency to be cruel, reactive, and play the victim will only intensify. Yolanda. You nailed it. She presents herself as above the drama while being deeply involved in it. She also gets a bit preachy and self-righteous as time goes on. Joyce, sweet and classy, but maybe too nice for the show. That's probably why she didn't last. She didn't bring enough drama. Carlton. Batched crazy asterisk sums it up. She was more of a chaotic interlude than a long-term player. Does the show go downhill? Yes and no. The early seasons had a natural feel, and the drama came from real relationships. Later on, you can tell that a lot of the conflicts are manufactured, and many of the women don't seem to like each other outside of filming. That makes it feel a little stale. The shift from genuine wealth and luxury to just non-stop arguing is a major complaint from longtime fans. That said, RHOBH still has its moments, and the newer seasons bring in some great villains. Looking at you, Erica Jane. The drama isn't as fun as it used to be, but it's still a fascinating social experiment. Would love to hear your thoughts as you keep watching. Do you think any of your favorites will change? It's such an interesting discussion because The Real Housewives is both reality and performance. These women are living their lives, but also crafting narratives, whether consciously or subconsciously. And while wealth and privilege might make their struggles different, pain is still pain. Kyle's situation is heartbreaking, no matter how shady she's been. Watching someone lose the foundation they built their life on, especially so publicly, is brutal. Erica, on the other hand, is complicated. She was definitely complicit in her own way, whether she knew everything or not, but I do think she was controlled and manipulated by Tom. That said, her reaction was often cold and defensive rather than vulnerable, which made it harder for people to feel for her. LVP's takedown was one of the most cutthroat in RHOBH history. The timing, right after her brother's death, was awful, and it was clear she wasn't in a place to fight back like she normally would. Whether or not she was the mastermind people claimed, it was cruel to watch. Camille, completely unhinged and yet sometimes weirdly relatable. Denise, so much potential, but yeah, her choice in men is questionable. And Teddy, there really is no case for Teddy. I love what you said about empathy being conditional in this Fantasyland, because it's true. We pick and choose who we relate to, who we forgive, and who we condemn. Maybe that's part of why RHOBH remains so compelling. It forces us to examine who we extend grace to and why. This is hilarious and unhinged in the best possible way. Your brain is basically its own Bravo production studio, and I love that for you. The Sutton dream sounds exactly like a mid-season drama arc. She falls for a shady guy, the group tries to warn her, chaos ensues, and then we get a shady "where are they now" card. Brittany randomly being there and getting a "she did not, in fact, let him in her bed" update is sending me. That level of Bravo-esque messiness is chef's kiss, and the rest of your Bravo dreams. Luan throwing a shoe because of a dress critique is peak Countess behavior. Erica's pool party with secret-keeping drama? Iconic, but the Jack's dreams being good? I gasped. You might need a dream cleanse, or at least a confessional interview to process this. Honestly, I'd watch a whole show where you just narrate your Bravo dreams like they're real episodes. Keep them coming. Haha, you're not wrong. Lisa Rinna and Harry Hamlin have been together for so long that it makes sense they'd start to resemble each other, both in looks and mannerisms. It's like that old saying, couples who stay together long enough start to look alike. Lisa's signature expressions, especially that pout, and Harry's calm yet charismatic presence definitely give off a similar vibe. Their speech patterns and body language being alike just adds to the uncanny resemblance. Now that you've pointed it out, it's impossible not to see it. You're absolutely not alone in feeling this way about Brandi in RHOBH Season 5. This was the season where her behavior really crossed the line from messy reality TV drama to something darker and more troubling. The Eileen incident. Throwing wine at Eileen Davidson was so unprovoked and juvenile. Eileen handled it with such grace, but Brandi tried to play it off as a joke when it was really just aggressive and embarrassing. Lisa Vanderpump's slap. This was beyond inappropriate. Brandi always tried to toe the line between funny and cruel, but this moment showed her complete lack of boundaries. Lisa V was visibly uncomfortable, yet Brandi thought it was okay to escalate it physically. Kim and Brandi's toxic friendship. She 100% enabled Kim's addiction. Brandi played into Kim's paranoia and fueled the rift between Kim and Kyle instead of encouraging Kim to mend things with her sister. It felt like she wanted Kim isolated so she could control the friendship. Mean-spirited behavior. Even when Brandi wasn't drinking, she had a nasty, attention-seeking edge. Her jokes were often just insults in disguise, and she rarely took accountability for anything. She'd act out and then cry victim when people called her out. Looking back, it's wild that Bravo let her behavior slide for as long as they did. She went from being the underdog in earlier seasons to someone who was downright destructive. Her actions in Ultimate Girls Trip, which led to Caroline Manzo leaving, just reinforced that she hasn't really changed. She thrives on chaos, but there comes a point where it's not just good TV anymore. It's unhealthy for her and those around her. It's totally valid to vent. Brandi's presence on the show was often frustrating, especially when her actions had real emotional consequences for people. Do you think she was just playing things up for the cameras, or was this really who she was at the time? You expressed your thoughts so well, the way the cast and Bravo ganged up on LVP for not sharing her trauma was beyond inappropriate. No one is entitled to someone else's pain, and forcing vulnerability for the sake of bonding is manipulative. Everyone processes trauma differently, and expecting someone to perform their suffering for entertainment is disgusting. As for Eileen's comment, 100% agree. The world is full of people advocating for humans, but animals often have no voice. LVP has done incredible work for animals, and if that's where her empathy shines, good for her. It doesn't mean she lacks empathy for humans, just that she sees where help is most needed. The moral superiority of people who criticize animal advocates is exhausting. If they really cared that much about humans, they'd be actively helping instead of whining about how someone else prioritizes their compassion. Also, watching of RHOBH's reunion on shrooms, iconic.